Most every fantasy story has at least one. Gandalf, Dumbledore, Obi-Wan, Jiraiya, All Might, Gojo, the quintessential big good. In general, the actual protagonist of a story is typically going to be on a journey of growth, meaning that at the beginning of the narrative, they are not yet going to be strong enough to challenge the uppermost forces of evil that plague the world. But until that time comes, there will usually be this other figure in their place, the big good, that stands in the way of darkness. Whether they are keeping villainous forces at bay, protecting the protagonist, or simply existing as one last bastion of hope in the world that cannot easily be crushed, this figure is a common and all too important role in fiction. That is who Shanks is, and who he has always been in the story of One Piece. From the very first chapter saving young Luffy from a Sea King, to returning at the climax of Act 1 to stop the World War and yet again save Luffy from death. Across the entire span of One Piece, Shanks' role in the story was made clear in a very deliberate manner. We can trace from the starting point of One Piece to the midpoint of One Piece, all the way to even the modern day approaching the climax of One Piece. We still see Shanks upholding that role as peacekeeper, as protector, as the figure that can be trusted to ward off the great evils of this world. From beginning to middle to even this penultimate stage of Luffy's journey, just before it is time for Shanks to step aside and for Luffy to pass him up, just before this final changing of the guards, we see Shanks continuing to watch over his protege just a little bit longer. And yet, out of the many characters throughout fiction that we have seen play the same role as Shanks does in One Piece, what is it that makes Shanks' character in particular so beloved? Why is it that he commands such overwhelming popularity among readers, with by far the least amount of screen time of any major character in the series? It's easy to write it all off as just hype, but Shanks is a deceptively well-written character, a crucial cornerstone of One Piece that is a necessity to the ideas of the series and the point of Luffy's story. The nuances to how Shanks is portrayed, and more importantly how he is used, are criminally underrated, as Shanks may be one of the best examples in storytelling of how less is more. Which is why today we're going to be breaking down the brilliance of one of One Piece's first and greatest characters. But before we get into it, make sure to subscribe. So to begin with, what makes Shanks so inherently likable? At its core, it comes down to a simple combination of traits that is universally beloved: great power combined with great humility. People are naturally drawn to characters that are absurdly strong, but choose to present themselves as incredibly mild-mannered and gentle. There is a famous phrase by Theodore Roosevelt: "Speak softly and carry a big stick." And that phrase represents Shanks in a nutshell. And while you may not necessarily approve of the United States' actual practices in foreign affairs, the idea behind the phrase is at the very least very appealing. To be capable of unstoppable force if you are pushed to it, but to never need to show that side because diplomacy and kindness is what you choose to represent. The reason people naturally love this idea is simple. It's because this is the type of person many people subconsciously aspire to be like. True strength can be described as being unaffected and unworried by anything, because you are so secure in yourself that you have very little need to show off how strong you are, to enforce your will on others, or even act intimidating. Shanks represents this sort of fantasy ideal of being able to command great respect if he so chooses without ever needing to act tough, instead calmly evoking warmth and kind-heartedness. This persona of Shanks is so interesting because One Piece in particular is full of these dominating conqueror's haki users, those with the disposition of the king. In the aggressive, hyper-competitive world of pirates, it seems as though no one wishes to appear soft and gentle. Think through all the conqueror's haki users we know, from Whitebeard, to Kaido, to Big Mom, to Doflamingo, to Kid, to Boa Hancock, on and on. The One Piece world is filled with big egos. People who are always one step away from breaking out into a fight, always ready to flex their dominance over others. Even the lighthearted Luffy is not exempt from this. We have seen time and again that he too will get caught up in the competition of who is the most alpha anytime that he feels like he's at risk of being shown up by someone he considers a rival. And yet, among all these huge egotistical personalities, you have Shanks, this unperturbed, unassuming, but unwavering tree amidst a storm of personalities. If we were to treat the word alpha seriously for a moment, well, the most alpha thing one can do is to not care whether or not people treat you like the alpha. And that is the essence of Shanks. He can likely go toe-to-toe with anyone in the One Piece world, and yet he has never, ever played the ego game. It does not matter who is insulting him or talking down to him, whether it is a fellow Yonko like Whitebeard or a lowly mountain bandit in East Blue. Shanks lets any disrespect roll off his back because he has nothing to prove. If someone comes to him specifically looking for a fight, in that case Shanks won't back down, but he himself will never jump to violence for no reason. And that's what makes it all the more exciting when those rare occasions come, when this quiet, unassuming man finally rolls up his sleeves and ever so briefly reminds everyone of who he is, while still maintaining the utmost restraint without ever truly coming to blows with anyone, with just the briefest reminder to others that he can get serious if need be. Shanks is able to literally shift the world. That is a compelling character. And Oda plays into this character concept hard. Even the style in which Shanks fights plays into this persona. There is nothing grandiose about Shanks. Whereas other emperors and admirals are towering figures with overwhelmingly powerful abilities. Earthquakes, magma, storms, and so on. Shanks is made to feel simple, just a sword and his spirit. This extends to his design as well. He is remarkably plain looking by the standards of One Piece top tiers. That is a concept that readers can latch onto. It may be hard to imagine yourself as a giant, larger-than-life figure who can make earthquakes like Whitebeard, but I imagine a lot of One Piece readers would like to believe that they would be someone like Shanks if they were dropped into this fantasy world. And this emphasis on simplicity actually even applies to how Oda delivers Shanks' ideologies. A lot of One Piece's writing and messaging is very dramatic, marked by grand statements and grand gestures. Someone like Hiruluk proudly proclaiming that a man only dies when he is forgotten as he kills himself with spectacle. Blackbeard yelling in the middle of the streets about how a man's dream never dies. Doflamingo delivering a theatrical monologue in the middle of a raging battle on the nature of justice. This is One Piece's signature style, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with this type of messaging. If anything, it makes for more profound moments. But think about Shanks for a moment in comparison. Shanks delivers far more grounded and soft wisdom. It's not worth it to get into a fight over some spilled drinks. It's okay to cry after a loss. It's only through knowing both victory and defeat that a man truly grows up. When Shanks expresses his ideas, it's not delivered with the same trademark One Piece exuberance. He is almost sage-like in his dialogue, and I particularly like how his style of phrasing often has this sort of understated gravity to it. A few seconds of courage have changed the future. Everyone help me save some face. Wouldn't you agree it's bad form to go after these young saplings after they've just made pirate history? Again, speaking softly, but carrying a big stick. But all that being said, looking back throughout One Piece, it's not just Shanks' personality, his actions, his design, and dialogue that make him such a beloved character. It's not even just the fact that they stand out in such stark contrast to all other notable figures in the world. It's the rarity of Shanks' moments. Less is more. Anytime Shanks appears, it is for something important, often a milestone moment. Anytime he gets serious, you know that it is a pivotal time in the story. Anytime someone as pacifistic and compromising as Shanks gets angry, it carries a tremendous weight. There is a mystique and presence to Shanks that comes from the selective use of the character. So much power, but such a reserved and enigmatic and distant personality. This plays into the sense of general hype surrounding the character as well. We haven't really seen him fight, but we've been given so many ambiguous moments that feed into this sort of undefinable aura around the character. Sengoku respects him enough to stop the war. Blackbeard respects him enough to stop his rampage. The Gorosei respect him enough to allow him to walk into Marijua. Green Bull respects him enough to leave Wano. It's the mysterious question mark of what can Shanks do? Not knowing and leaving it to the reader's imagination is inherently more exciting. What happened when Shanks and Kaido faced off during Marineford? We don't know. All we know is Shanks showed up at Marineford and Kaido didn't. And Kaido now ranks Shanks alongside the likes of Roger and Whitebeard. It's that sort of writing around Shanks that makes him such a fixation for so many fans. So taking all of that into account, the bigger question is, why does it matter that Shanks is written in such a manner? Why does it matter that Oda builds up the ideal, the mythos of Shanks so much in the reader's minds. It's not just to have a cool, exciting character lurking in the background. It's the fact that Shanks is meant to be the ultimate representation of the correct ideals of One Piece. Yes, Luffy is also that. Luffy is the protagonist after all, but whereas Luffy is the ultimate representation of freedom, Shanks is the model figure in terms of the correct path by which to live life. The lessons Luffy learns throughout the story, that the world is a dangerous place and he must become stronger if he wants to challenge it, that not everything is worth fighting about and there is strength to being peaceful, that protecting one's friends is the most important thing that is worth fighting for, that defeat and loss are a natural part of life and that one must use them to become stronger. These are all ideas that Shanks already knows and represents from the start. Shanks is always presented as a character that truly understands the world. He understands the values that matter. He is always presented as the voice of reason and truth amidst chaos, a man that everyone listens to. Whereas many other characters in One Piece serve to impart lessons, the idea is that even these figures are usually flawed and imperfect. Characters like Hiruluk, Otohime, Saul, and so on are often naive in their own ways that end up being their downfall. Shanks is the one figure in One Piece that you can point to that seems as though he is Oda's representation of someone that is enlightened. Possibly the strongest and most certainly the wisest pirate left on the sea, the ideal that Luffy is chasing. Shanks seems like Oda's most realistic depiction of the right way to live life because he is the man who has it all together. Again, Luffy is the embodiment of freedom for the reader, but Luffy is also meant to be read as an extremely exaggerated version of this ideal, basically acting extremely recklessly and never hesitating to do even the most boldest and most rash and most taboo of things. With Luffy, we are supposed to take away a message, but not necessarily copy how he acts in the real world. Shanks is the more relatable model image of a free, fully realized, enlightened pirate that is being presented to the reader from the start of the story. Think about all the messages that he brings. Chase freedom and adventure. Chase your dreams. Don't chase conflict for no reason. Live humbly and graciously. Place a great value on peace, but know that there are times when you cannot back down. Always defend the people you care about, and know that it is okay to cry, to fall short, to have to get back up again and continue to become stronger. Shanks is the model image from Chapter 1, not just for Luffy, but for the reader. The representation of the right type of pirate, the right type of person we can all aspire to become. So let me know your thoughts on Shanks in the comments below, and if you enjoyed this video then definitely like and subscribe, and you can get my Extended Thoughts podcast by becoming a member. Just hit the button below.